evening, everyone.
Good evening, Your Worship.
Please be seated. Evening all. It's great to have meetings that are relatively normal again. I know we still are exercising a lot of COVID precautions, but certainly quite a sense of more normalcy at least, and it feels like spring is actually going to arrive as well. And I think maybe one of our presenters, maybe even both of our presenters, are going to make us feel like spring coming up here shortly. So without further ado, we'll get on to the first item of business. Madam Acting Clerk.
Roll call, Your Worship. I have taken the roll, and all members of Council are present, with the exception of Councillor Chaboyer, who sends her regrets.
Thank you. And next item, please.
A motion to adopt this evening's agenda, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Lupke, seconded by Councillor Cullen. Any changes or additions? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favour? Opposed? That is carried. And next item, please.
Confirmation of the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held April 19th, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Frangi. Again, any errors or omissions? Again, not seeing any. We'll call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? That is carried. And next item, please.
Under the order of presentations, Your Worship, a presentation from Michelle Letourneau with an update on the Brandon Urban Aboriginal Peoples Council.
Very good. Welcome. Come on ahead.
Hello, good evening. On behalf of the Brandon Urban Aboriginal Peoples Council, or BUPAC as we'll be calling it, thank you for having me here tonight to update you, Mayor Crest and City Council members. So first order of business, I'd like to express BUPAC's gratitude for providing $20,000 in dedicated funding for the Truth and Reconciliation Week 2022. That happened after my last update, and we're grateful because, as you'll learn, it's leading to other funding and a very exciting week. Okay. At the prompting of the City Manager, Ron Bowles, I put together 2 nominations for awards that would recognize the City of Brandon's progressive approach in initiating a task force on Aboriginal issues in March of 2010, which saw the establishment of the Brandon Urban Aboriginal Peoples Council that same year. The work of many and the relationships developed since that time led to the success of the inaugural Truth and Reconciliation Week in September 2021. The nominations were submitted to the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, specifically for the Collaboration Award of Excellence and the Willard Award for Innovation, and also to the International City and County Management Association for its Community Partnership Award. And there'll be more to come on that front in the future. And as the BUPAC chairperson, Leah LaPlante, stated, truth and reconciliation weren't just words anymore, they had become a reality. That was her experience at Truth and Reconciliation Week last year. In terms of funding, so of course, the City of Brandon has provided the $20,000, $10,000 of which will provide for a transit shuttle, which will encourage many other people who either A, don't have vehicles, and it also help keep the parking down over at the site. So that's an enormous gift. But that contribution surely led to more. We have an ambitious program this year. It includes a weekend. It encompasses 2 other efforts, creating a new legacy. We'll be having their final gathering, and Truth and Reconciliation will bookend, it'll be within that week. And also the Brandon Police Service has an initiative that they're working on called Pulling Together. Amanda Conway is leading that, and they will be also within that week. So we're looking at a budget of roughly $56,000. So thanks to Westoba Credit Union, who was a huge support last year, they applied to their lender with financial We applied for 10,000. They're giving us 5,000. So they will be sponsoring the Sharing Circle section of our programming. Also, the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation is providing us with a $5,000 grant as well for this year. And that was on the recommendation of its regional advisory circle. We've also applied to the federal government's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation Community Projects Fund. That was about a month and a half ago. It takes them about 90 days, so we haven't heard back yet. And most recently, this is not in the presentation because it happened quite at the last minute. I was asked to, by the planning committee, which we just newly formed, asked to apply to the Brandon Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. They have a community projects fund. So we applied for 5,000 there too. And that just took place on Friday, and we'll hear within a couple of weeks. The credit unions, Westoba, Compass, and Sunrise, are also all on board this year. They were instrumental in having our inaugural week last year, and they all three now sit on the planning committee. So that's very encouraging. Okay, that's that. So we had planned to do a strategic planning session this year, but well, we were planning on November, and then we were planning again on March, but getting everybody together has proven difficult because as we moved out of COVID, all of the institutions and organizations are kind of scrabbling to get back to normal. But we did hold a work planning session for 2022. So we're right on board that way. And I'm going to go through the priorities that were established. So one of them is community. And BUPAC in the past has done stew-it-ups, as they call them, which is a community gathering around a topic or for conversation and just looking at community priorities. And as it turns out, the city is doing city planning right now. So BUPAC has teamed up with the city planners, and we're holding two different sessions at Princess Park on May 26th. Two BUPAC members and city staff will host from 11:30 a.m. to about 3:30 p.m. People can drop in, learn about the city planning, have some stew and bannock, thanks to the Friendship Center. So it'll be out there in the open and in the downtown area. A second one will be held at the Manitoba Métis Federation Bingo Hall. That date is to be determined, but it'll be within the next 2 weeks after that. So community engagement has turned into a very specific city-related planning thing, so it's very nice to do that. Another priority we had was City of Brandon, our work with City of Brandon. So we're doing a series of reconciliation teachings with a man called Tim Malone, who was the Honorable Murray Sinclair's advisor when Murray was the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So Tim's coming to Brandon. He will be presenting for the Assiniboine Community College, Brandon University, the Brandon School Division, and after he does those 4 presentations, specifically with these groups, and the City of Brandon, sorry, on the Friday, May 20th, we will be hosting, BUPAC will be hosting a public presentation at 205 College Avenue. And it's a 75-minute presentation where Tim presents videos from the witnessing that occurred during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and his own experiences. He's also a veteran, and he talks about his experiences being in the military. So it's a very inspiring and touching and educational presentation that he does. I sat in on one for this, I think it was the Sudbury School Division, Catholic School Division, and it was pretty intense. I learned even more. We're also going to be organizing something called Circles for Reconciliation on June 14th for city staff. It's open to all city staff. And we've invited Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, the Manitoba Métis Federation Southwest Region, and Treaty 2 to also take part. Basically, Circles for Reconciliation is a Winnipeg-based grassroots organization that operates on a 50% 50% Indigenous, non-Indigenous basis. So all their volunteers are 50% Indigenous, 50% non-Indigenous. And the circles are organized that way too. And they're organized by theme, and they have over 20 themes that they explore. They'll look at treaties, they'll look at the meaning of land, you know, what is Métis, and numerous themes like that, where people engage in conversations in a circle of 10 people. So what we're doing is presenting an introduction to that, and then there's the possibility of going forward and forging 10-week circles where a group of 10 will meet over 10 weeks for 2 hours a week and discuss around these themes. So this is another effort that the city is moving forward on. We're also looking into the 4 Seasons of Reconciliation, which is a 2 to 3 hour multimedia e-learning experience that I believe was brought forward by one of you earlier this year. So these are reconciliation efforts with the City of Brandon. In terms of Truth and Reconciliation Week, we put together guidelines so that we would eventually end up with a template for future years after this year, so that no matter who comes and goes, there's a template. It can be adapted, or it can be used as is, however things evolve in the future. We formed a committee this year as per recommendations. We held the first meeting April 27th. There are quite a few people on that committee. I'm just going to go through the list as quickly as possible. So we have representation from the Ask Auntie program, BNRC, the lead firekeeper from last year, who is also part of a prominent Indigenous men's group in town, is on the committee. James Montgomery from the Riverbank Discovery Center. We have Janine Pelletier, who's a BUPAC member, another BUPAC member who also represents the Friendship Center, a youth who is a BUPAC member, the Assiniboine Community College, Brandon University, the Manitoba Métis Federation Southwest Region, Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, Brandon School Division, Brandon Chamber of Commerce, the Sunrise Credit Union, Westoba Credit Union, Compass Credit Union, and the Brandon Police Service. So they all formed the planning committee this year. So we have quite a wide representation. And I told you about, in terms of the naming efforts, my plan was to, or our plan was to recall the Riverbank Discovery Naming Group together in April, but they had stipulated they wanted to meet outdoors, and as we know, April didn't quite turn out the way we all would wish it had. So I'm pushing that out into May. But it's also that same group that we'll be working with to start looking at the honorary street naming. So I know it's being delayed, but I do not control the weather. And for this effort also, I've applied to Westoba Inspire, their funding program, for funding for that. Because as you all know, BUPAC funding is pretty limited. And I have hopes that that's going to come through. And we also this year do intend to follow through on the 3-year strategic planning. But as you can see, the work plan created quite a long list of things to do. Another thing that was decided at the work plan meeting was that BUPAC will update City Council on a seasonal basis. So we'll be presenting a bit more according to Indigenous values. So spring, summer, fall, winter. Not necessarily on the very beginning as per calendar date, but seasonally. That's it. Any questions?
Very good. Excellent presentation. We will open up the floor to questions from councillors if there are some. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the presenter. Thank you very much once again for coming to council and presenting. I have 2 questions, if I may. First of all, you'd mentioned the yearly funding with regards to the Truth and Reconciliation Week and sort of cobbling all that funding together to get to that $56,000 number. Is that something that has to happen on a yearly basis, or have some of these organizations potentially made multi-year commitments that would take some of the administrative burden off and put more of the focus on the planning for activities and involvement and ultimately the learning that can happen there?
To my knowledge, well, no, these are annual. Yeah, you had no long-term funding. Scotiabank was the only one where you could apply for a 2-year sort of split, but Scotiabank refused me. They like to fund hockey and community arts projects, so it didn't quite fit into their parameters. But all of the other ones are annual. Yeah.
Thank you. One more, if I may, Your Worship. You'd mentioned the naming and honorary street names and that process, and that's great to hear, absolutely. Obviously, if the group is able to get together in the next few months even to kind of discuss that, from there, what do you anticipate that timeline looks like before potentially you could come back to council with some recommendations or even sort of a path forward that we can adopt and hopefully move forward with?
That's a hard question to answer. We've done preliminary work, so I have full confidence that this next meeting, which I plan on including scoping the timeline and not forcing a deadline, but really asking them how do you see us working in terms of time, because I'd like to have this completed before next winter. Because part of the whole thing is they really want to be outdoors for this, not in a, in a room. So I think at the last meeting we sort of all agreed that in the span of the outdoor season we would like to have some results. Yeah.
Oh, I commend yourself and BUPAC on both initiatives, because both are tremendously positive steps forward for the community. Thank you.
I'll maybe jump in if I can on the National Truth and Reconciliation Day celebration. So last year, the very first one, you turned it into a whole week long, and I wasn't quite sure in your presentation, unless I just misunderstood, whether that was kind of the same, or you've tightened it up to more just on the weekend, which is kind of, I did hear you talk about bookending, but
right. So the way it's looking right now is we will begin again on September 27th with the sunrise ceremony, the raising of the teepees. We'll be involving the public this year. It won't be a corporate challenge, but the public will be able to register, and then we'll make teams from there, just to involve as many people as possible. That's the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, it will be Creating a New Legacy folks who will have that entire day. So it's kind of separate, but the sacred fire will continue to burn. We'll do something, so on Thursday, Amanda from the police service will do her thing in the afternoon, and we'll do something light in the evening, like a film, something of that sort. And then we really kick in Friday, which is Orange Shirt Day, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. That will be a full day. That will be the walk. There'll be things going on in the morning. Then the Saturday and the Sunday. Monday will be a quiet day, perhaps a movie in the evening, and then Tuesday will be the Sisters in Spirit Walk. So we're looking at September 24th to October 4th.
okay, good.
But just sort of waves of more quiet days, and yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be more on that to come, obviously, as all the events get kind of penciled in there. So
Yeah.
Good, thanks for that. Any other questions? Okay, I think you got it well covered, and the presentation and the graphics were excellent. So thank you very much, and more importantly, thanks for all that you do. And again, it's going to be an exciting and very very meaningful event, and well, number of events, got many things on the go coming up. So we look forward to all of that. So thank you very much. And a motion to receive, Councillor Desjardins.
Yeah, through your worship, I move that the presentation by Michelle Letourneau with respect to an update on the Brandon Urban Aboriginal Peoples Council be received.
Seconder, please. Councillor Fawcett. Whoever wishes to speak.
I do, your worship. We were in the middle of a pandemic, and while we were in that pandemic, BUPAC wasn't meeting quite regularly, and we could have easily lost steam and energy. But we were lucky enough to tap Michelle for the position of the Urban Aboriginal Peoples Coordinator, and came out of the pandemic, and we put on Truth and Reconciliation Week last week, and I feel like BUPAC has as much momentum now than they ever have. So kudos to BUPAC, to Michelle, and to the city for recognizing how important that week's going to be for our community.
Great. Thanks for adding that. That was important. Any other comments before we call the question? Okay, we've called the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And next item, please.
A presentation by Jane Neal with respect to an update on the Year of the Garden, your worship.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
You're very nicely attired, I might say, right off the bat.
Get to that in a minute. Okay, where am I going here?
Hang on. Coming to change it
Not there.
up here.
Well, good evening, everyone, anyway. And you might wonder why I'm wearing this. So 2 reasons. The first is because it is so cute. And you could have one too. But the second is because I am with B-City Brandon. I'm also with Westman Gardeners Club, which is the smaller of the 2 garden clubs in Brandon. And somehow or other, I got myself onto the committee for Year of the Year of the Garden. I don't know how those things happen, but there I was. The Year of the Garden Committee is headed by Brady in Parks and Recreation. And we have members from the Brandon Garden Club there, from the Green Spot and Incredible Edibles. So a number of organizations that are all to do with gardening are coming together to put together plans for Year of the Garden. I just feel, though, that I just have to pause here a moment because I'm here with this frivolity and talking about gardens and gardening is in my heritage. I'm a gardener. My father was a gardener, father's father was a gardener, and my mother. And I've just been then listening to Michelle talk. And I have been, as I've been working on this committee as well, it's not lost on me just how colonial all of that actually is, of garden clubs and garden associations and ornamental gardens. So I just had to just pause and recognize that before I got on with the presentation, which I now will do. So last month, the Mayor proclaimed Brandon as a municipality participating in Year of the Garden celebrations. It's the centennial celebration of Canada's horticultural sector. There's the website which you can go on and have a look at what is happening on a national sort of level. It's been seen as an opportunity for Canadians to get outdoors, potter around in their own gardens or maybe on their balcony, out in beautiful outdoor spaces and gardens. And doing this, it has already been shown. Research shows that it reduces stress and makes you feel better, all of which is needed after pandemic gloom. So it's a national celebration centered on National Garden Day, which is June 18th, Saturday, June 18th. But each community can decide what they take on board from the sort of the national program, and we can build our own plan around that. And in Brandon, this is so far what the plan is. I'll come back to National Garden Day in a minute and Grow Red and Grow Sunflowers. We have events being planned in for Garden Days, which is June 13th to 18th. There's more, every time we meet, there's more things starting to happen. And we meet tomorrow, so I expect more to be added to this list. But you can see that there's all sorts of organizations that are coming together and being involved. Our Garden Heroes is a national program, but on a local level, we are also nominating Brandon's Garden Heroes. Not just individuals, but organizations as well. And they will be celebrated on June 18th in National Garden Day anyway. And as I say, it's organizations as well. And so I don't know whether you know, but the Brandon Garden Club is the oldest horticultural association in Manitoba. So they will be certainly worthy of getting an award on that. Okay. And there's also, it's not just a one-week event, it's a gardening year event. So there are other events that are happening around the year. And there are some being listed there again, things are being added each week as we meet. And Communities in Bloom, which is a regular program in this community anyway, but obviously that's very appropriate for within the celebrations for this year. Picnic in the Park. So this is planned for Stanley Park on Saturday, June 18th. We'll be giving away... Oh yeah, I keep wanting to sort of, when I see this, and all of the theme will be around gardens, and I see the music, and I want to start humming, in an English country garden, although that's not quite appropriate for a prairie garden. Tracy is growing plants in the greenhouse to be able to give away on this day. Probably, I think it's going to be mostly vegetables, but she's just fabulous, and she's going to just add to her greenhouse capacity this year. Sunflower seeds. So seed packets are being given away, courtesy of Mackenzie Seeds, who have come through big on being able to provide us with seeds to give away. And lots more, activities are being planned around that particular day. This is a national campaign. So this is encouraging everyone who has a little bit of garden or has a balcony or has a pot plant to grow red. An opportunity to go really crazy on red as a celebration of everything Canadian, really, and in particular to pay tribute to the lives lost and to honor the frontline workers during the pandemic. And then on a local level, this is our local promotion, a Brandon promotion of creating a buzz for Ukraine. And what we want to have is sunflowers. Sunflowers everywhere. Everyone growing sunflowers. And you see the mayor has a sunflower. So, thank you. Yeah, and I really, I don't really need to say why we need to be doing that for Ukraine. But this is why I'm sort of come as sort of Bee City Brandon, because at the beginning of this year, we were starting to think and plan around how to create awareness for our pollinators. The importance of pollinators, our native pollinators, especially the native bee, which is our most important pollinator. And we came up with the idea of a campaign to grow sunflowers, because bees just love sunflowers, and they're easy to grow, and they look absolutely fantastic and beautiful. So we thought that was a good campaign. And then Ukraine happened, and that was obvious that was... And then Year of the Garden happened, and that's where we brought, Bee City Brandon brought it to the committee for Year of the Garden, and have taken it on board as being, let's get sunflowers growing everywhere that we can in Brandon. And helping with that, as I said earlier, Mackenzie Seeds has come forward with a donation of lots of seed packets, and so have Lindenberg Seeds. And it allows us to be able to sow seeds in the public gardens. Tracy is allowing us to go out as volunteers and sow the seeds. And with the packets of seeds, we'll be giving them out in events and taking them to areas where we can try to encourage people to be growing sunflowers. And that's really about it. So all I want you guys to do is to go and enjoy the weather that we are about to have and start planning your garden and plant red, plant sunflowers. And this is the website that you'll see what is happening in terms of the city and the committee for what we're planning for Year of the Garden. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. You're a very active, inspiring person in our community, so really appreciate that. And this, as I stated at the beginning, I thought this was going to help vault us into spring. We've been a little bit cheated of spring so far. I think every resident would find that, although I'll say we lucked out a little bit in Brandon and kind of threaded the needle on some of these past weather events, so we're not too bad, but everybody is definitely craving to get started in spring, so your presentation is very timely and very exciting what's planned coming up, and it's fun, also very symbolic on many counts with the planting of red to recognize, pandemic losses and frontline workers, and then of course with the sunflowers and Ukraine, and then of course it all wraps together with our Bee City. And I guess it didn't show up on the camera here. I'm going to pull this in. So I do have a sunflower, and Jane made it. So this has been brightening up my office until tonight, and I thought I would bring it along and try and help out. So we'll open the floor to questions if there are any. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. I have one just because I'm not sure anybody in the public has actually seen her frivolity yet. So I was wondering if we could turn the camera on to her for a quick smile.
There we go. That's a good call, because I think the presentation was up on the screen the whole time and people didn't get to see what we were seeing. So thank you, Councillor Desjardins, for that. And other questions, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Neal. Thank you so much for the presentation this evening. One of the questions I had around getting active, getting involved in gardening, and one thing that I've learned being a parent is kids are the ultimate motivator in getting families involved, getting parents involved in these sort of things. Have you had any luck or any opportunity to speak with Brandon School Division representatives or be able to get into schools to help share this? Because I know every time my kids bring something like this home, then it ultimately becomes a action item that we take on as a family. So I was just wondering.
It's on my list, let's put it that way, but also one of our volunteers for Bee City Brandon works in one of the schools, and she is already talking with her principal, and actually I think some of the classrooms are already starting to talk about how to grow sunflowers in the classroom. Sunflowers don't transplant well, so just so you know, for anyone who's wanting to grow sunflowers. But so yes, we do. And now that I've got seeds and seed packets, then I can start talking to schools such as that. And we're also trying to plan in what we might be able to do around that event week. And the library is actually going to be doing events on activities with kids, but that would be mostly sort of drawing sunflowers and having them displayed up in the library for that. But definitely on my list of...
Go ahead.
Quick follow-up, if I may. That's excellent to hear. My second question is for somebody like myself, who isn't a green thumb by any means. Is there a resource within your organization or within the organization that can help people that are not able to sort of get over the hump, so to speak, in growing? So.
Yes. So one of the things I said at the committee was that, well, I talked to someone that I know, and she's like, well, I'll do that, Jane, but how do you grow sunflowers? And I'm like, it's easy. So, well, not if you've never, as you said. So the Green Spot, Bernie has drafted up a how to grow sunflowers, and so we're going to be producing that, yeah. I was hoping I might be able to bring it tonight, but I will, once that's complete, I'll send it out to you and anybody else that wants it. But yes, we're doing a how to grow. So in the garden, plus in a pot as well.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Jane has provided little packets of sunflower seeds to all
Yes,
our
those are
council, and those
sunflower
are
seeds.
to plant, not to eat. different kind of sunflower seed.
I should mention the bee. So the photograph of the bee on the sunflower and the bee that you have as a rock is our official bee. So we made, I don't know what you do, but we got an official bee, I think it was a couple of years ago now. So
Right.
this is the orange banded bumblebee. Bombus ternius. Yes. So this is Brandon's official bee. And so once you've grown your sunflowers, you can be out in your yards taking photos of the bees on your sunflowers and look out for that bee. And that's actually will be one of the events that we're doing or competitions we're doing is to post photographs onto social media and prize.
Very good. And we have Councillor Cullen next. This is what they look like. I'm not sure if that shows up on camera. Little rocks made, but go ahead, Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Jane. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the actual commercial bee industry at this point in time. I hear they've had an extremely rough winter this winter with some of the hives having some sort of a mite or whatever that's been extremely devastating to a lot of those producers. And it's nice to hear that the City of Brandon's doing our part to make sure that we've got, for the ones that are there and need the help, that we're the first people that are lining up in your organization. So again, I just wanted to thank you, and if there's any time that the bees need a little bit of a break and helping out as much, even more so this winter, I hear that it is needed even more than some other years. Okay. So again, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. And I didn't see any other hands. So again, I think we have it covered. A lot, again, coming up and going on. And again, I think people are just really anxious for all of this stuff in the summer over the last couple of years that we've had. So it's going to be a great thing, and we really commend you and your group for really rallying it together and providing information and just exposure and all this. So it's going to be a beautiful summer. I can see it coming already. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A motion to receive would be in order, please. Councillor Cameron, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the presentation by Jane Neal with respect to an update on the Year of the Garden be received.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Cullen. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Community comments, feedback, Your Worship.
Yes, and this is a portion on Council's agenda that they hold open for any member of the public in the audience, although I don't know that we have that many this evening that wants to come forward and provide any comments or feedback on any item that's on tonight's agenda, and the total of 15 minutes is allowed. Again, now that our presenters have completed, I don't think we've got too many other than we have a member of the media in the audience, but I'm not sure he wants to. Any feedback he has will show up in tomorrow's paper the next day. So I think we're covered then. Next item, please.
Under the order of committee reports, Your Worship, we have a verbal report from the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation.
And very good. Councillor Desjarlais.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick update on the last couple of meetings. We in March we did welcome Cam Wirch and Pamela Smith to BDDC. We said goodbye to John Zeke and thanked him for his service. And we had two new members step up to be the chair and vice chair, Ron Chaluk and was Jay Beiser. And then in the last meeting we had a presentation from Teen Challenge, who have some challenges with their building, and so we're looking for some funding. And also looked at or some other projects that are in the queue that we're not allowed to discuss, but some optimism there coming to the downtown. And lastly, we reviewed the angled parking that's scheduled to come to the downtown this summer and gave sort of a verbal approval from the BDDC for the city to proceed with that.
Good. Thanks for that. And just And one of the other people that moved on as well had their term had been up was the
Mike
board
Mandel.
chair, Mike Mandel. So
Thank you.
Good, thanks for that. Any questions from any member of council to Councillor Desjardins about the Downtown Development Corporation report? Not seeing any. Okay, we move to the next one, please.
We have a verbal report from the Poverty Committee.
Councillor Lupke.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a pair of presenters at our last Poverty Committee. First off, Sonakili Tembo from the City of Brandon to talk about the city planning and the city plan. She shared a presentation on the city plan, the goal, the components, where we are in the process, what's next. And our Poverty Committee members provided some feedback on the engagement sessions as well as the content. And I guess for the public, there are some engagement sessions coming up here, I believe, in May and early June, and it might have been already publicized and getting some feedback so people can participate in those sessions. And they're on some specific topics as well, so check the City of Brandon website on that. We also had a presentation from Aaron Murray from the Adult and Teen Challenge. Aaron shared his personal story with his journey through the Adult and Teen Challenge and about his current role. He explained the local addiction supports programs in Brandon, the renovation of their space, the women's home that they operate just outside of the City of Brandon, and their ongoing challenges like access to affordable childcare and their funding streams. In relation to the access to affordable childcare, one of their challenges for people entering their program, if they are single parents, is finding childcare while they go through the program. So that was one of the things he had talked about specifically.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of Councillor Lupke on the Poverty Committee report? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you for that. And the next one, please.
We have a committee report from the Western Manitoba Centennial Auditorium.
And Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just an update from the Western Manitoba Centennial Auditorium. The Auditorium Board met on April 20th. We reviewed the capital plan for the upcoming year as far as where the auditorium has some major projects, namely the sound system on the horizon for an improvement for the auditorium. The sound system actually is a legacy sound system, so has been in place since the auditorium was constructed, so it is time for some improvements there. So we were able to discuss that as part of the capital plan moving forward. We also had the opportunity recently to welcome the new Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage to tour the Western Manitoba Centennial Auditorium. That's Andrew Smith. So we were happy to welcome him there, to have him come through the auditorium and take a look at an important building that's part of his portfolio. So we're happy to welcome him there. On a sad note, we had to actually postpone the Randy Bachman show that was coming to the auditorium due to some concerns that were outside of our sort of wheelhouse. It was on behalf of the promoter themselves that they did have to postpone the tour. We do have, though, on a much better note, upcoming Menopause the Musical, which is actually really well received thus far, and we're looking at potentially a full house for that, and that's actually tomorrow evening. Also the Alan Jackson Experience, and then for people that are getting ready for Mother's Day, the Brandon Community Orchestra is presenting a Mother's Day celebration at the auditorium, and that is actually led by conductor Josias Sanchez, who I know you've met a number of times in your Christmas Day or your holiday events. So a lot of stuff happening at the auditorium, and like I say, we're excited to continue to see the doors open and people coming through on a regular basis to experience this venue.
Thank you very much. He pronounces it Osias.
Osias. There, that's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cameron. And any questions of Councillor Cameron on the WMCA report? Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Cameron. Just as a query, do we have hearing assist available at the Centennial Auditorium for those people who would like to that have a little more difficulty hearing during plays and those kind of things? Is that something that might be considered in the future or part of the new sound system?
Through your worship to Councillor Cullen, definitely something that would be considered in in a future upgrade at the auditorium. As it stands now, it's not something that is available. But is obviously something that would continue to be on the radar as we're continuing to make decisions to make the venue more accessible and make it welcoming to everybody in the community.
Okay, thank you.
And on the Randy Backman, I believe he's just dealing with some personal health problems. I think that's been widely publicized. So I'd cancel the whole tour, so hopefully that does come back around again for him and that we do get to welcome him back.
Sure.
Any other questions of Councillor Cameron? Not seeing any, and thank you for that. I'm glad to hear the new minister has been out already, so that's very positive to hear. And the next one, please.
There's a committee report from the Downtown Wellness and Safety Task Force.
And Councillor Fawcett.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. Just a quick update. The task force continues to meet on a tri-weekly schedule. We're working diligently on a list of potential long-term solutions. Concurrently, the task force has been considering initiatives that the city can implement this year and are preparing to make short-term recommendations to council. Chair Tim Silversize is going to be presenting 11 solutions to council on May 16th.
Thanks for that. So the task force did want to provide as much, but a bigger presentation certainly coming at our next meeting. So, Councillor Desjardins, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship, and looking forward to the next meeting. In the meantime, I am wondering if there are some initiatives, I hate using the term, it's overused, but low-hanging fruit that the city and operations could just start moving on like right away quick. Thinking of graffiti and knowing that it's still like it's an ever-present problem in the downtown. I'm getting calls from business owners that are, kind of had it, and if we're going to move on this, I'm not sure if we need to wait any longer with the graffiti piece. So, just curious about that.
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, through your worship, they are already looking at that. Those are discussions that we had through a budget. So there is some of that money that's been put in place. So those are ongoing.
The same term they were using is the low-hanging fruit ones, and so I think you'll see that all capped off at the next meeting, and it'll be ready to go. And the city manager really is sort of things getting teed up behind the scenes on that. So with the notion that once it's come back to council, that we'll be able to move quickly on. Any other questions for now on that one? Okay, thank you for that. Those were the reports we were aware of. Sometimes there's other verbal reports that we may not be aware of, and we'd be glad to have them now. Okay, not seeing any others. Motion to accept those 4 reports would be helpful, please. Councillor Lukey, and seconded by Councillor Desjardins. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Under the order of inquiries, your worship.
Okay, we didn't have any in advance, but sometimes some crop up through the day, and we'd be glad to have those now. I know you're just being nice to the substitute teacher here, but all right, looks pretty good. Thank you very much for that. And next item, please.
Under the order of announcements, your worship.
Any announcements this evening? Councillor Lukey.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make sure the public is aware that Physio First is hosting their 17th annual Food First Food Drive on May the 14th, and it's going to be the drive-through event at the food bank location, of course, at Samaritan House at 820 Pacific Avenue. Non-perishable food items can be donated from 10 to 3. You just have to pull up, and a volunteer will be available to come and collect your items from you. They've had a lot of success with that drive-through during the pandemic and are continuing it, even though they could do it, I suppose, without the drive-through portion now. But our community has really stepped up when they've held this in the past, and expectation, I guess, would be that we will again on the 14th of May.
Great announcement. Good program. Any others? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I just want to take a moment on behalf of council to congratulate the Brandon Wheat Kings, who unfortunately their season did come to an end last night in an exciting triple overtime fashion. But just wanted to congratulate Coach Don McGillivray. I'm having a tough time with names tonight, but Coach Don McGillivray and his team on, battling through a difficult season with a couple of stops with regards to pandemic restrictions and a game that was played in front of no fans at all, but they did complete the season and just wanted to wish everyone with that organization the best and on behalf of council just congratulate them on completing the season. Obviously not the result they wanted, but still represented the city quite well.
Well said, and it was great congratulations. It's certainly Wheat Kings are one of Brandon's famous calling cards, so we're well known for that. And again, they had a good battle to the end, but aren't going to get to move on any further, sadly. So, and Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. Just to draw the public's attention to two important events coming up nationally. May 5th is Red Dress Day, and so it's a day to recognize missing murdered Indigenous women, and you can put a red dress in your window or on your doorstep, or wear a red dress, and there will probably be a walk that day. So maybe check out the Friendship Center. The other important day is the Moose Hide Campaign Day, and that's on May 12th, and I'm wearing a moose hide right now, and that's again to collectively act to end violence toward women and children. The Moose Hide Campaign Day is on May 12th. You can check out their website at moosehidecampaign.ca. And if you do, you will be absolutely blown away at just how well oiled this machine is. It is probably one of the most incredible websites I've ever been on. If you have any questions about what to do for the Moose Hide campaign and what's happening, you'll know within 5 minutes. It's absolutely spectacular. And you could go do as little as wear the moose hide on your sport jacket, but you could also go a step further. You could go with the fast. There's workshops online. There's an elders lodge online. You can plan events in your community. So have a look at it, and consider helping end violence toward women and children by acknowledging that with participating in the Moose Hide campaign.
Thanks for that, Councillor Desjardins. Just put it in my calendar. Thanks for that reminder. And any other announcements? Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you, through your worship, and this is sort of on your door all the time that we have a 2022 election in the fall. Registration for the mayor open today, so people can come in anytime now. It's an open seat, as his worship is seeing his last month through. But also remember, June 30th is a registration date for council, and there's at least 2 open seats confirmed on council, as well as everybody is also looking for not as much competition as much as we'd like to have debate and discussion on the city, and we want people to consider running and putting their names in for offices on the city and the school board. So we'll probably be doing regular reminders.
We will, and I pledged that would happen. I was going to tail it off at the end of announcements if nobody else had, but thanks, Councillor Fawcett, because I'll sound like a broken record, but school division also coming up in that election. So again, we really need our community to rally around and think about all these 3 elections: school board, city councillors, ward councillors, and mayor's seat, and consider running. Consider getting involved in helping somebody's campaign if you're not running, and very least of all, just be engaged in the whole process, and make sure that you vote, and encourage everyone else to do so. So we really want to up our engagement in this community. We've got a really active, progressive community, and we want to just keep that going. Thanks for that, Councillor Fawcett. Any other announcements? And not seeing any, we can move on to the next item, please.
Under the order of general business, Your Worship, we have an application to subdivide 1307 18th Street North.
Thank you very much. Just before we start, I will recuse myself from this item, as the applicant is competitor of a business I'm involved in, and although there's not really any specific conflict of interest, it just could be a perceived one, so just to keep it clean and tidy. So I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bruce Luebke. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe Ryan Nico, our Director of Planning and Buildings, has a presentation on this application.
Thank you, Your Worship. So not a big presentation, but certainly do want to walk council through the recommendation and the background, just because there's a few conditions here, so you best kind of understand what's going on first. This subdivision is run concurrently with conditional use, so the conditional use is for a warehouse because it's a commercial zone, so there's a special process you have to go through. The public hearing was held by the Planning Commission. There were no folks in opposition, and it was approved. So the conditional use is approved, so they could go build it if that's what they wanted to do. The discussion now is about the subdivision. So the subdivision is the legally dividing up the land. Fairly basic. The site was formerly Pat Moore's Nurseries, for greenhouse, and it was there for a long time. It's been vacant for a while. In terms of the site itself, it's quite large. There's a drainage channel that runs right through it, so there's a low-lying area, a lot of natural drainage, and the city has an easement on that property, and then we're looking to expand our easement rights to more, do a better job of formalizing the drainage channel. The one complicating factor, which is why I wanted to outline this today, is Quail Ridge Drive. So, as council is well aware, there's been lots of discussion about the 18th Street and Braycrest intersection and the challenges that we've had because it hasn't been functioning at a very high level. So the City Council, I'm sure, recalls there was a functional study done for the entire Braycrest corridor. That was about a few years ago now, and part of that was fairly comprehensive public engagement involving the residents up and down Braycrest, as well as other residents who were interested in the city. And there were a few recommendations. The one recommendation was regarding Braycrest and 18th Street, was to look at a future roundabout. Now, part of the challenge there was that it's within the jurisdiction of Manitoba Infrastructure, so there would need to be some form of partnership, which we're always trying to make progress on. And then the second component was looking at Quail Ridge Drive, which would allow folks traveling along Braycrest to go to the signalized lights up to the service road up to, I think, Outback, and that's where the signals exist. So that was, so the long-term permanent solution was the intersection improvements at Braycrest and 18th, and one of the more interim ones to help, I guess, lessen some of the load on that intersection was the Quail Ridge Drive extension. So this is a little bit of a creative recommendation because typically what happens when lots get subdivided, that's when municipalities have the legal right to have land dedicated. So that could be land dedicated for a public road. So in this case, the city of Brandon has the ability to ask for the dedication of Quail Ridge Drive as per the functional, and that land would be identified on the plan of subdivision dedicated to the city, and then the city would have the ability to construct that alignment at a time that made sense for us to do so. Staff is recommending that this be deferred. We would love to have it dealt with now, but there were some questions raised by the applicant about the residual parcel. So in this case, there's lot A or parcel 1, however, lot 1, parcel A, however you want to think about it. That's the lot where the kind of the Pat Moore's nursery site was, fronting on the service road, and then there's the land further to the east. So there's a plan being worked on for the land to the east, but it's not yet quite figured out. So if we ask for the land to be dedicated for the road as in the plan right now, it might not work great with the applicant and their plans. So we've tried to give them a 1-year window. So this is a 1-year window to figure it out. If you figure it out and you bring it back and it looks a little bit different but still works, great. Everybody wins. If it doesn't, what this development agreement states and the recommendation for council is that the city will do it. So it provides us the surety is that the applicant will pay a deposit, which will cover the funds to the city to do a plan of opening. It's something we do from time to time, so it's not that hard for us to do. And we'll bring it back, so it'll be my group that would bring it back through the process and open the road as per the plan in the functional. And what this says, it says that the developer has to agree to it. So they would have to sign the plan and it would be done in a year's time. So what we're really doing is just providing the developer some opportunity to work out some options on the residual lands to develop it, perhaps in a little bit of a different way. If they were to make a change, they'd have to do a fairly comprehensive engagement process. We know we have lots of engaged folks on the North Hill, especially regarding that alignment. And it would certainly be our expectation that if there was a change to what was adopted by council in the functional, these folks would certainly be kept in the loop as part of that process over the next year. So there's a lot of other details there. I'm not going to walk council through the details. For the most part, it's pretty generic stuff. It was just the concept of deferring the Quail Ridge Drive extension dedication that I wanted to make sure council had a good handle on. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicol. Open for questions. Go ahead, Councillor Fawcett.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. Mr. Nicol, the question I have on this is the road that we were looking at there. It was what we were kind of presenting to everybody up there. So if it was to change, it would be coming back to us. The big piece here that we're looking at today, though, is just this sort of parcel A, you may call it. It doesn't really have any impact on that road, and it's not needed for that road. It doesn't play any role in it. It doesn't need an access for it. It doesn't need so it is two very different things we're sort of looking at. One is to do that project that they're looking at doing right now, and the other was the back parcel is giving them a year's grace as they try to figure out that other piece. And within the year, we would either be putting that road in ourselves, or they would be doing a public hearing to have it modified if it was going to be modified.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Fawcett, you're correct. The front part where they're proposing development really has no impact. It's just from a legality side of things, this is the city's opportunity to have land dedicated, which is why we're ensuring through this agreement we will still have that opportunity if the applicant chooses not to proceed on the portion of the property that would be impacted by the extension.
Yeah, and again, thank you, through your worship. The follow-up too is, so this is something that we did fairly similar across the 18th Street when we did a rezoning right on the corner of 18th and Breakrest, where we actually worked some property in there, because we are still working with the province on that intersection. So all of this is playing a role in the conversation we've been having on the North Hill about the 18th and Breakrest intersection.
Yeah.
So just for everybody, that these steps are being taken, and this is probably just as well that this has come, because it does now put it on the table, because they're asking for the rezoning, and it allows us to address it. Mm-hmm. So within a year, we'll know one way or another how that's going to work out.
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Fawcett, you're correct. Just
for clarity.
Yep, we did a similar across the street land dedication. It wasn't deferred that time. We just took the land because it was directly impacted by it. In this case, we're still have plans to take a look at it. We're just giving the applicant some time to see if they can figure out some alternatives.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Nicol?
I'll throw another one out. Just I know
Go ahead, Councillor Fawcett.
Through your worship, I know the neighborhood. Just again, for confirmation's sake and clarity, the reason they are looking at it is because that second parcel, there is the drainage issues there, which they're all very well aware of that, but it is, portions of it are a developable area. And so that's what they're looking at. So not only within the year might they possibly bring a realignment, but it may be because they bring in development of some kind as well.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Fawcett. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. The reason why it's being deferred is because it is developable and there's development potential there. So we're giving them some opportunity to figure out what the development potential is, and if there needs to be tweaks to the alignment, or if the existing alignment as proposed in the functional can stay.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Nickel. Just a really quick question on the residual lot there. And this is probably just for clarity for residents as well, but should that lot, hypothetically, if we're in a scenario like this, either with this one or in a lot in future, if a lot like that changes hands, potentially in between that grace period, does the city's sort of first right of refusal, I guess you could say, does that grandfather through to the next owner as well, or are we kind of back at square one if say potentially the developer said, you know what, I'm not going to move on this, I'm going to divest myself of it. Does that carry through, that the city still has that same, like I say, refusal on that potential property?
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Cameron, the development agreement goes with the land, not the owner. So it doesn't matter how many times the property sells, the agreement's still on the property. So if for whatever reason it's sold, it would still apply to the new owner, and the city would still have the same rights under the development agreement as we had on the former owner.
Perfect, thank you. And that, like I say, appreciate that, because that does provide some assurances to residents that are neighboring this property to know that, whomever moves forward with this property, there's still a plan that the city has in place for it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Nickel? I think we got it covered off. Thank you, Ryan. Motion would be ordered. Councillor Fawcett.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. That the application to subdivide 1307 18th Street North to create one parcel in the commercial arterial zone be approved, subject to the owner or successors entering into a development agreement with the City of Brandon with the following conditions. There's 14 conditions. There's a few more than an average one, and they were all those pieces that Mr. Nickel just explained.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor Lukey.
Great job.
Bring His Worship Mayor Crest back for our next order of business.
Do we have to stand again?
Where that one was going? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lukey. And on to the next item, please.
Under the order of general business, we have a tender for site preparation for multi-sport court and paving works.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll set this one out. There might be a perceived conflict because of my employment with this bid being awarded to the company that's lowest bidder.
Very good. Thank you. And Councillor Fawcett, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through your worship. That the bid from Zenith Paving Limited be accepted to carry out the work for the site preparation for multi-sport court and paving works as per tender and specifications for a total bid price of $525,097.83 net of GST. And further, that $65,000 for the Riverview Curling Club parking lot rehabilitation be expensed to engineering operations with an offsetting transfer from the Capital Development Reserve.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. And I wasn't sure if anybody was going to touch on this one tonight. Okay, I think Mr. Rock is going to come on ahead then, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. Tonight we're here to get your approval to move forward with this project. One of the changes that happened in our 2022 budget, we approved the project, but the work that we're doing on the Riverview Curling Club is not actually the city's land. So the funds we were taking from the gas tax, we can't use those funds. So we have to take that money out of the development services reserve fund, which wasn't listed in our capital budget. So as part of our procurement, we have to make council aware and get council's permission to use the funds there. The project, we had one tender on the project. It has come in under budget. The agreement we have with the Riverview Curling Club is a great partnership because we didn't have to build a parking lot for the court, and that's one of the requirements for Jumpstart. We also have a new pathway as part of this project that will go from Maryland Avenue all the way out to First Street, and that's part of the project. So we work closely with development services and engineering to package it all together and do one tender. But when we were going to do our financial plan, we went, this one was a little miss for us, so we just wanted to bring it forward to you for your approval this evening.
Very good. Thank you. We'll open up the floor for questions on that. Go ahead, Councillor Fawcett.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Rock. Yeah, the good project, great to see it coming in under budget. That's always nice to see, particularly when we only had one bidder, which nervous. My one question is, great to have the partnership with Riverview Curling Club. I think that is just good community stuff. In the long run, the nightmare of April is still lingering on my mind, and the constant snowing every day, it seemed like. Come next winter, will the city or Riverview Curling Club be removing snow off the parking lot there?
It's my understanding that the Riverview Curling Club would continue to remove the snow during the winter months. The courts aren't used during the winter months, so we don't need use for them.
Yeah.
They normally clear the snow, so we would...
Yeah, because I thought they always did with their own parking lot, and it might be a tiny bit easier now too. So.
Okay, good question. Councillor Lupke, then Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Mr. Rock. This is probably, I guess, phase one of 2 phases of this project. This is the site preparation. So I'm just wondering kind of a timeline on site preparation, and then when do you see the court actually being installed?
In meetings that we've had with our partner, Jumpstart, they are hoping that we will have this facility up and running for September. That's why we're here tonight, to get approval on this, so we can award the tender to Zenith Paving so they can start doing preliminary work while the frost is still coming out of the ground. There's work that they have to do to get prepared. And then once they're done, then Jumpstart will come in with their group of people that will build the court for us, and their tenders are all set in place because they do several projects like this across the country. So we're working really closely with them to stay on their time, get it built here. And
yeah, it's good to see a quick timeline like that so that it could be completed by the time the next school year begins in September. So that's good to hear.
Thank you, Councillor Lupke. And Councillor Cullen.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Rock. How do we manage the joint usage agreement as far as terms? Like, I mean, I know that right now everything's, the curling club is there, it's stable, all those kind of things, but as we know from Central United Church changing hands and those kind of things, like, you wouldn't expect that, but how is that written into the agreement, and does it follow the land, just like, you know, our last challenge that we were having as far as, like, you're trying to figure out what the agreement follows the land no matter who the owner is of the curling club property? How do we just sort of keep ourselves out of the glue there?
I don't know the answer to that specifically, but our real estate department with the City of Brandon, they look after doing up the agreement that will be done with the Riverview Curling Club. We do have our pathway that'll go across their property as well. So we would write those particular things into that agreement, so we will always have that space available because we need it for the accessibility side of things.
Yeah, it's just that I just wanted to make sure that you know, when we don't have a parking lot and the parking lot is owned by someone else, things change, and just wanted to make sure that we were covered if that would happen.
Well, I'll certainly make sure that they're aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
And I didn't see any other hands just now. I think that has it covered. Thank you very much, Mr. Rock. Okay, back to the motion as presented. Any further discussion? Movers to close?
No, thank you, Your Worship. I think it's a great project, and look forward to seeing it completed by September.
Yeah, it is a fabulous project. And again, we love these sort of cooperative projects. Here we've got a national commercial interest, Canadian Tire, through their Jumpstart program, making a very big investment in this court. Of course, the city does a portion, Brandon Riverview Curling Club coming on board, so it's, I just love those, when we get, lots of people involved. That's really what makes a community, so this is certainly good news. So I think we're ready for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we're just going to retrieve Councillor Barry. Okay, thank you, Councillor Barry, and we can return to the next item, please.
Interim appointment to the Planning Commission.
Councillor Barry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that the following person be appointed to the Planning Commission for an interim of office beginning immediately and expiring March 31st, 2025, and that is Andrew Siklicki.
Okay, seconder, please. Councillor Lupke, who wishes to speak?
Just real briefly, Your Worship, there was an opening that came up on the Planning Commission through resignation. Mr. Siklicki has served on the Planning Commission before, and I think at some point, at some time, as chair as well. So bringing back some experience and youthful experience at that, and it's always nice to have people step forward and to serve on the boards like this that are important to the city.
Thank you. Another discussion? Not seeing any. We'll call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And next item, please.
Interim appointment to the Age-Friendly Committee.
Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that the following person be appointed to the Age-Friendly Committee for an interim term of office beginning immediately and expiring December 31st, 2023. And that name is Rob Levin.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Frangi. And mover wishes to speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a position open up on the Age-Friendly Committee, and having reviewed Mr. Levin's vast experience in the community, we have accepted his proposal and welcome him to the Age-Friendly Committee.
Very much. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Giving of notice, Your Worship.
Any giving of notice this evening? Seeing none. And next item, please.
A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Lupke. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Anybody that's watching us now can go